specialize more, I guess, if you're I think that's, there are a lot of areas that have that same kind of, push.
Could everyone hear the question? Did that make it out? The question is around, there are other areas like ballet and that can be similar to this. And I agree. I looked at figure skating. I have friends who are doing figure skating and gymnastics. And I don't know. I picked tennis because I knew a bit about it. I'm a fan of the sport. It's not written about as much as some of these other sports. Like, David Foster Wallace has done some writing on tennis, but there's a lot of writing about baseball or football. And I picked this because I think it's an unexplored area.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I was trying to think of tennis literature as I was reading, and Foster Wallace wrote quite brilliantly about tennis. I was his opponent at Yaddo. For many sets back in 1986 and 1987 when we both were sharing this writer's colony. Unfortunately, he was a much better tennis player, but it's always a good way to learn. Another really great tennis novel, it's a short novel, that I don't know if you've ever read, Barry Hannah wrote a novel called The Tennis Handsome, which is really, really terrific, and which I highly recommend to those who haven't read it. But that's about all I can think of. I'm not sure there's anything else. I mean, Martin Amis has written well about tennis.
Love the Martins, huh?
New Yorker, but I don't know. I'm not sure it's a really highly developed body of literature.
Yeah, it seemed like a good area to go and explore, and I know it a bit, and I'm fascinated by it, and had access to some great players to help sort of round out the picture. But it's not, in that sense, just a tennis novel. It really does extend to this shift in our culture, really just one generation to the next, about how we are, as I said, the sort of pre-professional emphasis. But in terms of sports that we see day to day here in New York, tennis is really at the extreme.
Okay. I was just wondering, could you add creative writing to that list of areas that are subject to the same push to, specialization and extreme training, and with the MAs and things in creative writing?
Well, that would be good if we could, I think. In my own experience, I did not do. I actually never took a creative writing class, and I've just always loved literature and reading and hobbying around with the writing. And as Jay said, I used to run a technology company, and the first draft of the first novel I wrote, I had to travel around a lot. The company was based in Palm Beach, but I was living in New York, and it was tech, so I had to go to San Francisco and London and other places, and I was increasingly frustrated with the role and traveling a ton, and so I started writing the first book on planes to relax. Instead of reading, I would write. But I think writing, in a way, it's such a broader thing, like just the very nature of it. When we're looking around at schools for our kids, the thing that resonated with me most when I heard this at one of the schools was, we teach kids how to be great writers. And I thought, that's great, because if you can write well, that means you can think well. You're thinking clearly if you're writing well. And so writing as a discipline, I feel like that encompasses almost the whole curriculum. So it's almost hard to specialize in writing, because that just means you're thinking clearly. I don't know if you have other thoughts on that.
Well, I actually did go to. I did attend a creative writing program. I met Raymond Carver, the great short story writer, when I was a young, struggling writer here in the city, and his editor happily was his editor was an acquaintance of mine, and after lunch here in the city, his editor, Gordon Lish, had to go back to work, and Carver really had nothing to do, so Lish called me up and asked me if I would show Ray around the city, and we ended up just talking most of the time, but he eventually convinced me that my life struggling in New York City to get by and writing the occasional book review for the Village Voice and writing a few paragraphs of fiction when I wasn't hungover wasn't really conducive to becoming a great novelist. And I went and studied with him at Syracuse University, where he was teaching, and where I also had the bonus of Tobias Wolff, another great short story writer. And I don't know, for me it was partly about a supportive environment. It was also partly about a small stipend, a fellowship that allowed me to concentrate on writing instead of trying to make a living. And you know, having someone like Raymond Carver read my work and critique it and encourage me it was really helpful. You know, in Europe they find this idea insane. I just got back from France, where I was promoting my latest, and they think it's weird. But honestly, I mean, you know, you study tennis, you study piano, you study violin in a very formalized setting. And I think it's
my call on the written stuff.
We have this weird prejudice that since we all speak English, somehow writing is something that should just come naturally, and it's just not true. I mean, it's nobody can make a Hemingway, but on the other hand, you can learn aspects of craft and technique that significantly accelerate your progress. I don't think it's a necessary precondition. Douglas didn't do it, but you know, I think it can be helpful. I don't know. I'm just curious. Did you quit your job before or after you wrote the first novel?
I quit the job. I sold the company after I had written the first draft, but before I had a deal.
Oh, before you?
Yeah, so it was a leap of faith. And at the time, my wife also works, but at the time I was the breadwinner in the household. So it was a bit of a leap, because I remember we had just had our first baby and we were walking through Central Park and pushing the stroller, and she was saying, I can see you're snapping and you're frustrated and you're unhappy with this. And she had read the first draft at this point. She was very nervous about doing so. Man, if this is terrible, it's going to be very awkward. But she liked it, thought maybe this thing could go. And she said, well, why don't you figure out a way to wind things down at the company or sell the company? And so I went back to the board and said, I'll stay for a year if you want me to lead a sale of the company, or I can go now, but I'm going to go in a year at the most. And so I led a sale of the company and found an agent, finished out the novel, and refined it, many drafts. I never, the first draft of anything I write is pretty crappy, and I revise and revise and revise. I could go through 30 revisions before I'm ready to go with it. So, yeah.
Well, and with regard to rewrite, Carver, one of the earliest things I remember him saying to me is he said, I don't really believe in writing. I only believe in rewriting. And his feeling was you just had to get it. You had to get something down, and then you could really start in. And his short stories actually they went through dozens of drafts. Say hi. And I find, I don't know, my latest novel was the first draft bore very little resemblance to the finished product. So I'm with you there.
I think, if the first draft is 300 pages, the last draft might have 50 or 75 of those first 300, but it'll still be 300 just all redone, and the first page could end up being somewhere in the middle of the book.
How you doing, guys? I was listening to the whole discussion, and I thought to myself, Malcolm Gladwell had mentioned 10,000 hours. I think that book probably came out around the time that...
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble. Can you just speak a little closer to
Malcolm Gladwell's book?
Oh, okay, right.
Where he refers to the 10,000 hours, Bill Gates, all of the incredible magnates and experts and whatnot. Did that have anything to do with, did that inspire the book? Are you familiar with what Gladwell
I have. Is that Outliers? I think is the one I've read. That. Yeah.
Where he discusses that it takes 10,000 hours to become proficient or an expert at any craft or did that lend into any of your thinking, or did it?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds probably conservative to me. I think I spent well over 10,000 hours before I wrote my first published novel. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and I guess it also depends on what form that takes. I mean, in my own case, I was always immersed in literature and sort of hobbying around with the writing aspect of it. So I'm more self-taught, but with clocking hours sort of outside the classroom, I guess. And if you're talking about this book with 10,000 hours, I actually...
How many days is that?
I was referring more in regards to tennis.
With the sport, yeah.
Tennis.
So
as a parent too of young kids, I have 5 young kids, all on the edge of the sports arena. Basketball is more of our thing, but this idea that there's a curve, and if you don't get up that curve, you're just never going to get there.
I do. That is one of the pressures now. That if all the other 8-year-olds are on the travel soccer team and your kid's not doing it until he's 12, is there still an ability to slot in there and have a high school athletic experience? And I think that is one of the concerns. Because I'm all for 10,000 hours, and I think that matters. I agree with a lot of the principles he discussed in that book. The shame is that if an 8-year-old needs to sort of pick his sport, and really at the exclusion of not just other sports, but of everything else, it's sort of round the clock effort at some of these things. And the problem is, I do think there's probably opportunities to slot in, because a lot of these kids, when they're 8 and they're doing it to the 15, they burn out at 15, or they're injured, they're physically burned out, or mentally. And certain sports kind of lend itself. Hockey is the one I think that Gladwell really hit on, because if you don't get in early, then you don't make a team, and ice time is limited, so you gotta get in early. But I think there are other sports where you can come in a little bit later, like basketball, for example. And there's also a rising tide against this early youth single sport specialization. Steph Curry wrote a piece recently. A lot of athletes have written pieces about the benefits of playing multiple sports. John McEnroe, I think talks about how soccer made him a better tennis player with his footwork. And Steph Curry was saying, if you want to be a great basketball player, don't play just basketball all the way through. Play many sports. And I think not only is that better for whatever sport you want to put your 10,000 hours in on, but it's better to round you out as an individual.
Yeah, are there any naturals that just sort of step in? Or is that era just gone, where somebody has a normal life and then becomes a tennis star?
With tennis, the game is so... Maybe that could have happened in the 70s or something like that, when the training wasn't as big a piece of it. And, a lot of these tennis players now say that Lendl ruined the game, because you had Vitas Gerulaitis partying out there with the others, and then Lendl comes in and actually starts training and taking these guys to town. And they thought, oh my gosh, well now we got to start training. So maybe in the 70s you could do that, but I think now it's just the technology is so good.
I remember partying with Vitas Gerulaitis. He was a man of many interests.
But LeBron James is going to make the basketball team. But it's hard to step in now with sports as intense as they are.
Did you go back to the drug use in tennis and sports in general?
Yeah, the question was about drug use in sports, and as I said earlier, there have been tests in tennis, so we know it exists within the sport, and the only question is, I wouldn't speak on their behalf. They've got their own microphones. I did speak with them, but I'm not going to speak on their behalf. We know it's prevalent in sports generally. It's hard to forget the McGuire, Sammy Sosa days of testifying about baseball when it finally had the lid blown off. And it's this nuclear arms race of the drugs versus the testing versus the drugs versus the testing. And I think there is a feeling generally in sports and also in tennis that there is an ability for players to be ahead of the testing. And in addition to that, there are substances that are banned all the time, which means that players were using this year we banned a new couple of things, which means players were using it up until that time, and so there's always something that can be done.
I think it's sort of a shame that sometimes we read and hear a lot about a book or a movie or a work of art before we actually experience it. But I actually didn't read that piece of the Times last week, and it was a sort of wonderful and shocking moment when I got to the place in the book where suddenly this young man's trainer confronts him with the fact that he's going to have to think about performance-enhancing drugs if he wants to be at the top of his game. It was a nice. I mean, it was a really shocking moment in the book.
There are certain sports out there where you don't really make that association. Everyone, of course, knows baseball and cycling now that after Lance Armstrong. But with tennis or golf, it's rarely thought about. But there is, with just a little poking around, you'll see that there is a lot of speculation out there, and a lot of it's very credible reporting.
God, I hadn't even thought about golf. Now I'm wondering.
Tiger Woods just got arrested for DWI.
One of the things I did talk about some of the players with is how the testing works. So when you're at a tournament where there's testing happening, a tour official meets you on the side of the court with a clipboard, and they take you back and basically keep eyes on you until they get pee in the cup. So, and a lot of people are dehydrated. It could be a while, and they want to take a shower. They stand with the curtain open and watch you shower, and they are eyes on you. So there is testing in the sport, but again, some people wonder whether the testing is is doing enough, or it can be beat. So we don't know.